My pet zombie evolves into a stunning warrior. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 61. It was night. Night fell again in this secret realm. Like yesterday, all the nocturnal monsters began to move at this moment. In the dark night, one shadow after another flashed quickly. In the secret realm, the most dangerous time is often at night. Even Ye Ling did not plan to run around at night, because this might attract more monsters if he was surrounded by them. Even Shueyo, with his own spiritual skills, could not protect him. This time, Ye Ling did not find a suitable place. Therefore, he chose a thicker tree, climbed directly to the higher treetop, and chose a thick branch, prepared to spend the night there. Awoo! At that time, one could hear the howling of wolves. It seemed that some kind of monster wolf was hunting at this time. However, all this had nothing to do with Ye Ling. Leaning against the tree trunk, Ye Ling closed his eyes and rested. Shueyu stood silently beside Ye Ling, like a guardian. At this time, a battle was taking place not too far from here. A huge brown blue dragon was confronting a group of monsters in front of it with extreme vigilance. Yes, it was the ground blue dragon. Behind the ground blue dragon stood Huixiener, but compared to the ease she showed when she first entered the secret realm, Huixiener's face was slightly pale. The reason why she looked pale was that she had never expected that there would be so many monsters attacking her on the second night. The monsters that surrounded Huixiener and the ground blue dragon were the same as the monsters that attacked Ye Ling before. It was also a group of shadow demon wolves. However, compared to the shadow demon wolves that Ye Ling encountered, the number of shadow demon wolves Huixiener encountered this time was greater, at least more than 30. Moreover, the leader of the shadow demon wolf is very powerful. His strength has reached the first level, level 7, which is only one level lower than the earth blue dragon. If it is a one-on-one situation, Huixiener can be said to have no pressure. It can even be said that it is not a problem to completely crush. However, facing this kind of siege, even the earth blue dragon is willing but not strong enough. He has to deal with the battle while protecting Huixiener. This greatly reduces the original strong combat power of the earth blue dragon. These shadow demon wolves are also very cunning. They want to surround the earth blue dragon while hunting Huixiener. Awoo! The shadow demon wolf leader standing in the front held to the sky. This is the order to attack. The shadow demon wolves who received the order grinned and began to attack. Although the earth blue dragon's strength and defense are very strong, its speed is its weakness. Facing the agile shadow demon wolf, Di Songlong felt dizzy. Roar! Feeling that these weak shadow demon wolves dared to come to him on their own initiative. If a tiger doesn't show its power, you think I'm Hello Kitty. Di Songlong was very angry. This was intolerable. Roar! The two thick front legs stood up suddenly, and Di Songlong roared again. At the same time, it pressed down hard on the first side with both thick front legs. Boom! The huge body hit the ground heavily, and smoke and dust filled the air for a while. Even Huixiener, who was standing behind, could feel the vibration from the ground. And those shadow demon wolves who were running and preparing to attack Di Songlong or Shueyo. Under this earth-shaking situation, they hurriedly stopped their attacks. The huge earthquake just now made them unable to stand steadily. One by one, they had to stop. The smoke and dust filled the air, and even the shadow demon wolf, which could see at night, could not see clearly at this time. Huixiener, who had been hiding behind, immediately turned over and rode on Di Songlong. Run! Don't hesitate, run in this direction. Di Songlong naturally obeyed the orders of his spirit master. He immediately stepped out his sturdy 4 legs and ran in the direction pointed by Huixiener because his body was too huge and heavy. The running Di Songlong made a strange sound, which naturally attracted the attention of many shadow demon wolves. A fierce look flashed in the eyes of the shadow demon wolf leader. It would not give up the prey in its mouth easily. Awoo! With a long howl to the sky, the shadow demon wolf leader ran in the front and ran towards Di Songlong. As for the remaining shadow demon wolves, of course they followed their leader. Huixiener turned her head and looked at the shadow demon wolves chasing after her, her face slightly ugly. Wolves are monsters that will not give up until they achieve their goals. They have extremely strong patience and agile speed, although they are still a certain distance away from their own earth blue dragon. But the earth blue dragon is not suitable for escaping, but for frontal combat. For Huixiener, this is not a good thing if it continues for a long time. But now, there is no other way, so she can only run first. Episode 62. There are many trees in the dense forest. Such terrain is not convenient for the huge Di Songlong. But for the shadow wolf, the terrain here is the best hunting place. In order to prevent Di Songlong from fighting at a disadvantage, and for their own safety, Huixiener's decision is right. Otherwise, with these more than 30 shadow wolves, Di Songlong can be exhausted to death even if they are exhausted. These shadow wolves are not low in level, basically above level 1 and level 5. For a first level monster, the difference of 1 or 2 levels is not too big. Therefore, the large number of shadow wolves is too threatening. Unless you find a place that is easy to defend and difficult to attack like Ye Ling, or find a place with open terrain to facilitate Di Songlong to exert all his strength. Di Songlong ran for a long time at full speed, but it was indeed a bit difficult for Di Songlong, who was not good at speed. The shadow demon wolves behind had all caught up at this time. Who? Huixiener could even hear that her earth blue dragon was breathing heavily at this time. For the large and heavy earth blue dragon, running so fast was indeed a bit difficult. Looking around, she did not find any open areas. Huasianer gritted her teeth and looked helplessly at the shadow demon wolves behind her, who were getting closer and closer. At this time, she gently patted the back of the earth blue dragon and said softly, "Okay, stop. Even if you don't stop now, you will be caught up later. If you continue to run now, it will only make the earth blue dragon lose more energy. It is better to save some energy to deal with the attack of the shadow demon wolf." Facing the earth blue dragon that suddenly stopped, these shadow demon wolves quickly surrounded Huasianer again. The shadow demon wolves dripped saliva from their teeth. Their green eyes stared at Huasianer and Ditsonglong. In their eyes, these two were already their food. "Since we can't run away, we have to fight for it. I don't believe that I can't even pass the first stage of the assessment." Huasianer was not someone who gave up easily. Although she was a woman, as the daughter of the Hua family's patriarch, Huasianer also had a proud character. Facing a large number of shadow demon wolves, Huasianer now directly confronted them head-on. "Ditsonglong, roar with pressure." Huasianer patted Ditsonglong under her and said coldly. After receiving the order, Ditsonglong nodded slightly. His eyes, like amber, suddenly widened. Then, Ditsonglong opened his bloody mouth and let out a deafening roar. An endless sound wave spread out in all directions. The earth trembled and trees collapsed. It can be seen how powerful the roar of the earth blue dragon was. The shadow demon wolves surrounding Huasianer retreated in fear under this huge sound wave and power. There was a trace of fear in the dark green eyes. This was the pressure of the upper monster on the lower monster. If the earth blue dragon was strong enough, it could even rely on the pressure and roar to kill all these monsters. Except for the leader of the shadow demon wolves, the surrounding shadow demon wolves were all a little hesitant. Should they continue to attack the target they surrounded? Seeing that his men wanted to retreat, the shadow demon wolf leader roared. It seemed that he was very dissatisfied with these timid men. After roaring at their leader, all the shadow demon wolves could only bite the bullet and continue to surround. Damn it! Monsters with leaders are so troublesome. Huasianer frowned secretly. If it weren't for this leader, she would have escaped just now. The encirclement was getting smaller and smaller, and Huasianer's situation was getting more and more dangerous. The first shadow wolf finally launched an attack. However, how could the vigilant Ditsonglong not be on guard? Turning around directly, with a sweep, the thick tail, driven by power, hit the shadow wolf heavily. The shadow wolf wailed and flew out quickly. Bang! After hitting the tree trunk and falling to the ground, there was no movement. No one knew whether it was dead or alive. Instead, the other demon wolves seemed to be stimulated and launched an attack at the same time. The shadow wolf leader also did not sit and wait for death. He also attacked at the first time. At this moment, Ye Ling, who was resting on the treetop, was suddenly a wave of shaking woke him up. Something seemed to hit the tree, causing the trunk to shake. Ye Ling woke up from his sleep and rubbed his eyes. Shui Yu, who was standing next to him, was still standing quietly, without any intention of moving. Without Ye Ling's order, Shui Yu would not act on his own. What's going on down there? Who was the unlucky guy who was surrounded again? From such a high treetop, Ye Ling looked down, but because it was too dark, he could not see clearly. But it can be judged that a battle should be taking place down there. Episode 63. A fierce battle was going on below, although the shadow wolf would be knocked out from time to time. But as long as the shadow wolf could stand up again, it would rush forward again, completely fearless of death. The Ditsonglong, who was surrounded, had to protect Huasianer on his back while repelling the shadow wolf. Under various problems, he was completely in a passive situation. Although the Ditsonglong's body defense was relatively strong, he was repeatedly attacked and faced with the claws and teeth of the shadow wolf, and he could not withstand it. There were more and more wounds on his body, and blood slowly dripped down his scales. Looking around vigilantly at the group of demon wolves staring at him, the pain from his body made Ditsonglong very manic. Roar! The manic Ditsonglong roared angrily at the group of shadow demon wolves. If Huasianer hadn't been on Ditsonglong, Ditsonglong might have been able to fight. Although it is not a pure-blooded dragon, the earth blue dragon has a certain dragon power. Even if the dragon power cannot control these shadow demon wolves, it will slow down their movements to some extent. In addition, the earth blue dragon has a strong body, so it may not be without the power to fight. The dragon power, just now, the earth blue dragon has already released it. If it were not for the influence of the dragon power, the earth blue dragon might have been lying on the ground now. The leader of the shadow demon wolves looked at the dead or half-dead shadow demon wolves around him. He raised his head and held to the sky. Awoo! Although several of his men died, the leader of the shadow demon wolves did not care much. If he could deal with this earth blue dragon and eat its flesh and blood, the leader of the shadow demon wolves felt that he could become more powerful. After all, it was dragon blood and dragon meat. Although it was not pure, the energy contained in it could not be underestimated. Awoo! Awoo! The surrounding shadow demon wolves responded one after another. They were ready to launch the final attack. Damn it! I happened to encounter a group of shadow demon wolves. Huasianer's eyes were full of unwillingness. Her strength was so strong that she had no problem passing the first stage of the assessment. But she was unlucky and actually encountered a group of shadow demon wolves. If Huasianer had a second level strength, I'm afraid it wouldn't be like this now. With each level up, the spirit pet will gain new talents or skills, and the combat power will be greatly increased. But unfortunately, there is no if. The current situation is that Huasianer has been forced into a desperate situation. In the next battle, there is a more than 90% probability that the earth blue dragon will lose. If it weren't for protecting himself, the Earth Blue Dragon would have at least a 40% chance of winning. But there is no way, this is reality. Husianer tremblingly stretched out her right hand and looked at the watch on her left hand. She was hesitating whether she should press the emergency transmission button. Once she pressed it, it meant that she had given up. She was very reluctant to give up, but the current situation was no longer a question of whether she wanted to or not. If she dragged on, she might die here. Forget it, maybe this is my fate. Husianer didn't forget to close her eyes, tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Her right hand pressed the emergency transmission button on the watch. Gee. At this moment, a flash of blood suddenly passed by. Puff. Then, Husianer heard a sound of blood gushing. Opening her eyes nervously, Husianer saw a shadow wolf staggering, with a lot of blood gushing out from the side of its neck. Then, the shadow wolf fell directly to the ground. After twitching a few times on the ground, the shadow wolf stopped moving. This sudden change caught Husianer and the shadow wolf leader off guard. Husianer was of course happy, because it seemed that someone had rescued her. The leader of the shadow wolf was naturally very angry. His people were killed silently, and in front of him. They simply didn't take him seriously. Gee. Puff. Another flash of blood flashed, and the same sound came. It was still the same familiar formula, the same familiar taste. At this time, the leader of the shadow wolf finally discovered the existence of the enemy. He suddenly opened his bloody mouth with sharp teeth, and an energy ball composed of dark power came out of his mouth. The target of the energy ball was a dark tree trunk. Boom. When the energy ball hit the tree trunk at that moment, a bloody shadow of the shadow wolf leader flashed by quickly. The tree trunk was hit by the dark energy ball and exploded suddenly. The whole tree was directly broken in half. Crack. Boom. The broken tree trunk collapsed to the ground and hit the ground heavily. The trees in the secret realm are not small even if it is a first-level monster. If it is hit by such a big tree trunk, it will lose half its life. And Husianer finally saw clearly who saved her. Episode 64. Outside the secret realm, the representatives of the 4 top-level Ye Ling academies who had returned to the scene also noticed the situation in the secret realm. They all saw Husianer being chased by the black shadow wolf. At the beginning, the other 3 representatives also thought that this genius girl would definitely enter the Xuanwu Ye Ling Academy. However, judging from the current situation, the probability is very small. Teacher Hua. It seems that the genius you came here for this time is not very lucky. He actually encountered a group of shadow demon wolves. Bai Tong looked at the situation in the secret realm and gloated. After all, if a genius girl cannot join their Baihu Ye Ling Academy, it is best not to join other top-level Ye Ling academies. Every year, there will be a big competition between the Ye Ling academies. If the opponent has fewer geniuses and the one has more geniuses, then the chance of winning will naturally be greater. You should know that if you can win the Ye Ling Academy competition, you can get many federal rewards. This reward includes a large number of resources and even powerful spirit pets. Almost every year, all the Ye Ling academies will definitely fight for it. Of course, Ye Ling academies of different levels will compete separately. The top Ye Ling academies will only compete with top Ye Ling academies. The academy battles are team battles. Of course, since there are teams, there will naturally be individual battles. Individuals are not divided by academy level, and the rewards they receive are also personal. This is a bit far-fetched seeing Bai Tong's gloating look. Hu Ling tightly grasped the armrest of the chair with her right hand. From her face, it can be seen that Hu Ling is very unhappy. She thought that Husianer could easily get a top 10 result, but she didn't expect that her luck was so bad that she encountered such a thing in the first stage of the assessment. You know, she came here for Husianer for this assessment. If Husianer can't pass the first stage of the assessment, then she will have made a wasted trip. Of course, it's not a wasted trip, there are other students nearby to choose from, but this is contrary to his purpose. Humph. The result is still unknown. Teacher Bai, it's better not to jump to conclusions. Maybe you will be slapped in the face later. Hu Ling snorted coldly and retorted. Turning her head away and ignoring Bai Tong, Hu Ling was worried that she would not be able to resist fighting. After all, this is a public occasion, and it is obviously inappropriate for the representatives of the 2 colleges to fight. Although she was unhappy, Hu Ling also knew the importance of the matter. Lu Feng and Hong Xiu looked at each other. Both smiled bitterly and shook their heads. Although Bai Tong's words were not very pleasant to hear, they were true. Husianer's current situation is very serious. Because it was too dark at night, they did not realize that Ye Ling was actually nearby. After all, Ye Ling was resting on the treetop just now, and no one would have expected him to be there. The flash of blood on the screen startled all the representatives who were watching the battle. Then, under the attack of the shadow wolf leader, the blood shadow also revealed its true face. They could see clearly that this blood shadow was actually Ye Ling's pet Shueyo. When seeing the sudden appearance of Shueyo, Hu Ling, who had been prepared for the worst, suddenly looked happy. You know, Ye Ling is a person who can use the second-level spiritual power chain, coupled with his very strange pet. In Hu Ling's opinion, Husianer's crisis should have been resolved. Compared with Hu Ling, whose face turned better, Bai Tong's face naturally became a little worse, slightly gloomy. After all, it was said just now that Husianer would be eliminated, but now she was saved by others, slapping her face. Looking at Shueyo on the screen, Bai Tong felt a little unhappy. Why do you want to intervene at this time? Isn't it enough to just do your own thing? Of course, this can only be said in the heart, Bai Tong will not say it directly in front of others. Back in the secret realm, Shui Yu, who showed his figure, landed steadily on the ground. This is Ye Ling's pet? When seeing Shui Yu, Huasianer shouted in surprise. She was about to give up, but she didn't expect that reinforcements would suddenly appear. And this reinforcement was very powerful, and his strength was not even inferior to hers. One earth blue dragon was enough to make all the shadow demon wolves attack together. Now there is another pet whose strength is not weaker than the earth blue dragon. These shadow demon wolves basically have no hope. The shadow demon wolf leader stared at Shui Yu with a pair of fierce eyes. Suddenly, how could the shadow wolf leader give up when his time was interrupted? Although 2 of his men died suddenly, this could not stop the shadow wolf leader. Di Songlong was already seriously injured. If he continued to attack, he would surely die. In this situation, the shadow wolf leader would never retreat. A woo! Held to the sky, the wolf howl resounded through the sky. The shadow wolf leader was ready to launch a new round of attack. Episode 65. Shueyo, Crazy Blood. Ye Ling's voice came from an unknown direction. After receiving the command, Shueyo instantly activated the skill Crazy Blood. A scarlet bloody smell spread from Shueyo. A red light flashed across Shueyo's pale eyes. Under the originally pale skin, the blood was boiling, and the skin was slowly stained with a layer of red. The zombie fangs, which were not too long, also became much longer and looked a little creepy. The already seriously injured Di Songlong and the eagerly eyeing shadow wolf leader could feel a bloody smell coming towards them. This bloody smell made them restless. Di Songlong was better because Huasianer, who was riding on its back, was gently comforting it. Di Songlong, don't be nervous, it's here to help us. With Huasianer's comfort, the restless Di Songlong calmed down a lot. However, the leader of the shadow wolf on the other side could not help but retreat 2 steps after feeling the huge bloody breath. It was scared. Its instinct told it that the newly appeared enemy in front of it was much more terrifying than the earth blue dragon. However, the victory was clearly within sight, so how could the shadow wolf leader be willing to let it retreat at this time? He turned his head and looked at his subordinates around him under the cover of this bloody breath. Each of them was timid. His 2 ears drooped, obviously very afraid of Shueyo. A woo! In order to prevent his subordinates from being affected further, the shadow wolf leader decided to strike first. After receiving the order, the shadow wolf did not launch an attack immediately, but hesitated. Even monsters are afraid of death. Although monsters are far stronger than ordinary animals, they also have animal instincts and no fear of death. Seeing that his subordinates seemed indifferent, the shadow wolf leader was furious. He raised his front paw directly, aimed at a shadow wolf beside him, and slapped it directly. Ah! This shadow wolf had never thought that his leader would suddenly attack him. After a wail, he was slapped to the ground. Fortunately, the shadow wolf leader knew the limit and did not kill his subordinates at once. But after being hit like this, it is unlikely to stand up at least in the short term. The sudden killing of the chicken to scare the monkeys made the other shadow wolves retreat 2 steps in fear. They were all very worried that they would become the leader's next target, so they were naturally very scared. Ah! The shadow wolf leader urged his subordinates to attack again. With the lessons learned from the past, although the shadow wolves were afraid of Shueyo, they were more afraid of the leader's killing of the chicken to scare the monkeys. The shadow wolf pack launched the attack tremblingly. A woo! A woo! Forced to suppress the fear in their hearts and launch the attack, the shadow wolf could not exert its full strength at all. Shueyo seemed to smell the smell of blood, with a faint smile on his face, an excited smile. Blood can stimulate zombies and make the zombies' combat effectiveness stronger. After launching the blood madness, Shueyo's speed and strength have been greatly improved. The moon was dark and the wind was high, and blood was flowing. Shueyo was like an elf in the dark night, shuttling between the shadow wolves. At the same time, Shueyo was also like a ruthless killing machine. Wherever he passed, there was always a corpse of a shadow wolf falling. Huasianer, who was out of danger, could clearly hear the sound of very light flesh entering one after another. More and more shadow wolves gradually lay down. The remaining shadow wolves, faced with such a situation, did not care about the threat of the shadow wolf leader and scattered like birds and beasts. Each of them fled in all directions at this time. The most important thing was to save their lives. Seeing that all his men had fled, the shadow wolf leader was also very angry. Even if he wanted to stop them, there was no way. These shadow wolves were already scared to death at this time, and they could not be stopped. The shadow wolf leader stared at Di Songlong and Huasianer, his eyes full of entanglement. It was not easy to get such a big stock, but so many men died in vain. Unexpectedly, in the end, nothing was gained. But now it is obviously impossible to do anything. The shadow wolf leader does not want to accompany his men and die here. The pair of green eyes, the killing intent did not diminish, but the body of the shadow wolf leader slowly retreated to the back. Shueyo, don't let it run away. At this time, of course, the other party cannot be allowed to escape. Once the shadow wolf leader escapes, he can quickly gather his men. Although those shadow wolves have all run away, they will always return to their place of residence. Now, the shadow wolf leader has remembered the smell of Shueyo and Huasianer, and it is not impossible for him to make a comeback. Ye Ling has no habit of letting any threat go, and this kind of threat should be strangled. Episode 66. The moment Ye Ling spoke, the leader of the shadow wolf ran into the darkness at a very fast speed. And Shueyo was also not slow. As soon as Ye Ling finished speaking, he moved. He quickly chased after him and disappeared into the dark forest. Ah! After a while, a wailing sound came from the dense forest not far away. Then, a dark figure fell from the sky at a very fast speed. Get out of the way. Huasianer was shocked and patted Di Songlong in a hurry, urging him loudly. After receiving the order, Di Songlong dodged and retreated a distance continuously. When Di Songlong just stopped, a deafening sound came from the place where it was just now. Boom! The dark figure hit the ground heavily, the earth trembled, and dust flew. At the same time, a small figure shuttled between the tall trees and finally landed steadily on the ground. Ahem! Under such a huge smoke and dust, Huasianer quickly covered her mouth and nose. The visibility in the dark was already very low, and now the smoke and dust were everywhere. It was even more so. After a while, the smoke and dust finally slowly dissipated. There were two figures at the place where the dark forest fell just now. Looking closely, who else could it be except Ye Ling and his pet? Huasianer naturally recognized Ye Ling at first sight. Jumping down from the back of the earth blue dragon, Huasianer hurried over. When she got closer, Huasianer finally saw it clearly. The dark figure that fell from the sky just now was the escaped Shadow Wolf leader. But now the Shadow Wolf leader looked a little miserable. Falling from such a high place, a deep pit was smashed on the ground, and the whole body seemed to be embedded in the ground. A lot of blood overflowed from the mouth, and the limbs were twitching slightly on the ground. If it weren't for the heaving of her belly, Huasianer would have suspected that the Shadow Wolf leader was dead. On the other hand, Shuiyu beside Ye Ling looked like nothing had happened. The red blood-stained robe on her body was not even stained with a speck of dust. Huasianer knew very well how strong the Shadow Wolf leader was, level 7 of the first order. It was only one level lower than her own Earth Blue Dragon. Even if it was the Earth Blue Dragon, it would probably be difficult to defeat the opponent in one round. But Ye Ling's pet actually defeated the Shadow Wolf leader while chasing him. It was terrifying in such a short time. If it was the Earth Blue Dragon, facing the fleeing Shadow Wolf leader, I'm afraid it would only be able to watch. There was no way. The Earth Blue Dragon was good at frontal combat, and its strength and defense were advantages. But its speed was not good, and it was not good at chasing the enemy. In addition, Ye Ling's pet just threw such a big Shadow Wolf leader back directly, and it was thrown so high. It means that Ye Ling's pet is not weak. When seeing Ye Ling again this time, Huasianer didn't expect that Ye Ling's strength would change so much. It can even be described as a drastic change. Ye Ling didn't care about Huasianer, who rushed to his side. There are two reasons why he saved her just now. The first is that these Shadow Wolves are too annoying here, and they will howl from time to time. The second reason is that when he met Huasianer in the wild, the other party did not express any malice to him. At least, the two are still classmates. Since they are classmates, they will naturally help if they can. These are the only two reasons. If Huasianer knew, she might be angry to death. After all, she is a school beauty. How can she not have any charm? Of course, Ye Ling would not take the initiative to say such things, and Huasianer could not guess it. Shuiyu would naturally not let go of the blood in the body of the Shadow Wolf leader. Facing the Shadow Wolf leader who could no longer move, Shuiyu easily got its blood. Adding the blood of the Shadow Wolf leader before, Shuiyu can have another full meal. As a professional garbage collector, how could Ye Ling let go of the Shadow Wolf leader and the bodies of these Shadow Wolves? Not only the Shadow Wolf leader, but even the Shadow Wolves that just lay down could not escape Ye Ling's knife. Without talking to Huasianer beside him, Ye Ling began to dismantle the evolutionary materials on the Shadow Wolf leader. Looking at Ye Ling who ignored her, Huasianer couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. Am I so unattractive? Look at me, don't you want to look at me? Although Huasianer is very beautiful, the purification materials of the Shadow Wolf leader are more attractive to Ye Ling now. Mr. Hua, I suggest you take a rest as soon as possible. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. The bloody smell will attract a large number of monsters. It will only be more dangerous if you continue to stay here. While carefully disassembling the evolution materials, Ye Ling kindly reminded Huasianer. Episode 67. Hearing this, Huasianer raised her eyebrows. What is this? Is this caring about me? Sure enough, it seems that this fairy is still charming. A hint of joy flashed across Huasianer's face. She felt very touched by Ye Ling's sudden concern. Well, that Ye Ling, otherwise let's go together. After hesitating for a long time, Huasianer still said what she thought in her heart. This idea also came to her suddenly, because from the looks of Ye Ling, he seemed to be living a very comfortable life in this secret realm. Although Huasianer herself is quite strong, as long as she doesn't face the powerful monsters living in groups, it will be easy for her to hold on until tomorrow. However, Huasianer's Earth Dragon is now seriously injured and needs to return to the Spirit Pet Seal to rest before it can recover. During this period, Huasianer can only rely on herself, but in the secret realm, relying entirely on herself, without a spirit pet, there is no way to survive. Therefore, Huasianer wanted to follow Ye Ling. After hearing what Huasianer said, Ye Ling paused slightly and frowned, obviously thinking about something. If he wanted to take Huasianer with him, it would mean that he would have to bring a burden. The injuries on Di Songlong's body would require at least half a day of rest to move normally, but it would be a bit ungentlemanly to just leave Huasianer here. But Ye Ling didn't want to do this obviously thankless task. So Ye Ling hesitating whether he should team up with Huasianer. Facing Ye Ling who hadn't answered her question for a long time, Huasianer's face froze. She thought Ye Ling would agree, but she didn't expect that she couldn't get the answer she wanted for a long time. On second thought, it was right Ye Ling didn't owe her anything, so why would he bring a burden like her? When she thought of this, Huisiener couldn't help blushing slightly. She is also a spoiled young lady, so she is still somewhat unable to change her mindset. Now, if you want to get help from others, you naturally need to pay the corresponding price. Ye Ling, don't worry, I will give you the corresponding reward until the end of the first stage of the assessment tomorrow. I will pay you 100,000 federal points as a reward. Huisiener gave a number very domineeringly. Given Ye Ling's current situation, he really needs a lot of federal points. It is impossible to rely on yourself to brush monsters and find any evolutionary materials you need. Some evolutionary materials are only in specific places or particularly dangerous places, or come from a dangerous monster. It is indeed a bit disdainful to rely on yourself completely. At this time, the Federal Trading Platform has a very important role. On it, even some rare evolutionary materials may be found. Of course, these rare evolutionary materials naturally require more federal points. In the Federation, only federal points are hard currency. Of course, besides the Federation, what else is used as hard currency, Ye Ling doesn't know yet. Those things can only be accessed after going to the Imperial Spirit Academy. In the face of the conditions proposed by Huisiener, to be honest, Ye Ling was really tempted. 100,000 Federation points is not a small amount, and it only takes one day. Okay, I agree to your conditions, 100,000 Federation points. Turning around, looking at Huisiener at such a close distance, Ye Ling responded with a serious face. Hearing that Ye Ling agreed so readily, Huisiener almost spit out a mouthful of blood. What kind of people are these? Giving 100,000 Federation points, he agreed so easily? Is it really like this? You do this, making me, the school beauty, very embarrassed. Am I not attractive? However, although she was angry, Huisiener finally achieved her goal this time. At least, Ye Ling was willing to team up with her. Then there will be basically no big problem in the next last day. At this time, Ye Ling directly stretched out his hand and placed it in front of Huisiener. Seeing this action, Huisiener was obviously stunned and couldn't react for a while. What does this mean? Is it wanting to hold my hand? In this dark forest, my earth dragon was injured. Is Ye Ling trying to hold me to ensure my safety? When she thought of this, Huisiener couldn't help blushing, lowered her head and said hesitantly, Ye Ling, isn't this a bad thing? We are not familiar with each other, this. Hearing this, Ye Ling's face darkened. What the hell is this woman thinking? What, isn't it obvious with my gesture? This ability to imagine is simply unparalleled. A card of 100,000 federal points, do you understand? As he said this, Ye Ling stretched out his hand and gestured. This is already very obvious. Huisiener only realized now that she had been thinking too much. Isn't the other party's gesture a classic gesture for asking for money? But she had thought so much, and when she thought of this, Huisiener couldn't help but get angry. Her face turned pale. Episode 68. What a straight man. Huisiener couldn't help but curse inwardly. After all, she is the eldest daughter of the Hui family. How could she not pay back her debts? Is it necessary to do this? Don't I have any face? Well, I'm here to participate in the competition. How can I carry so many federal points with me? Don't worry, I am the eldest daughter of the Hui family. I won't be short of your things. It's just 100,000 federal points after the first stage of the exam. I will give it to you after I get out. After all, in this secret realm, although I have cooperated with you, it is still unknown whether I can get out smoothly. Huisiener crossed her arms and said everything she said. Thinking about it this way, it seems that there is no problem. The other party is a well-known person after all, and it is impossible for him to break his promise for 100,000 federal points. Frowning slightly, Ye Ling finally compromised. Huisiener was right, who would carry so many federal points with him for no reason? Okay, in that case, let's sign the document immediately, write your name, and stamp your handprint. After saying that, Ye Ling took out a piece of paper and a pen and started writing on it. Soon, a complete document appeared in front of Huisiener. It clearly stated that Ye Ling would take Huisiener to successfully pass the first stage of the assessment. The condition was that Huisiener paid 100,000 federal points. Looking at these simple words, Huisiener really didn't know what to say, even a little speechless. Is it necessary to do this? It seems as if I really owe him. However, seeing Ye Ling's firm look, Huisiener gave up the idea of trying to persuade him. Huisiener, who rolled her eyes at Ye Ling and looked very unhappy, snatched the document and wrote her name on it. As for the handprint, there was so much blood on the ground, Huisiener just used her finger to stick a little blood and pressed it directly on her name. Is this okay? Huisiener, who was unhappy, threw the document to Ye Ling. Taking the document, Ye Ling looked at it carefully and put it away after confirming that there was no problem. Okay, the contract between us is reached, don't worry, I will protect you in the next day. After all, you are worth 100,000 federal points. When Huisiener heard the first half of the sentence, she was still a little happy, but when she heard the second half of the sentence, the little bit of happiness in Huisiener's heart disappeared instantly. I know. Humph, carrot. With a light snort, Huisiener turned her back. Now she didn't want to see Ye Ling, that annoying face. As for Ye Ling, he continued his work, dismantling the evolutionary materials. Let's talk about the other side, outside the secret realm. Hui Ling, who was originally in a very bad mood, is now in a very good mood after seeing Huisiener being rescued by Ye Ling. He. It seems that someone is going to be disappointed. The little girl of our Hua family seems to be quite lucky. She actually met that boy Ye Ling, otherwise she might really be eliminated. Hua Ling covered her mouth and chuckled, and looked at Bai Tong provocatively. She clearly remembered Bai Tong's gloating look just now. Now that things did not go as Bai Tong wished, Hua Ling was naturally very happy. Not only was her own young generation fine, but she also slapped Bai Tong hard. On the other side, Bai Tong, who originally wanted to watch the show and was ready to gloat, was actually slapped hard, so he was naturally in a bad mood. Humph. With a cold snort, Bai Tong turned his head away, not looking at Hua Ling's smiling face that made him irritated. With a slightly gloomy face, Bai Tong never expected that Hua Xianer would be so lucky to meet Ye Ling. Seeing the change of their positions, Lu Feng and Hong Xiu looked at each other and smiled helplessly. I really didn't expect it. I thought that the little girl of the Hua family was already in trouble, but I didn't expect that Ye Ling could actually turn the tide. Lu Feng was a little emotional. Hua Xianer was really lucky. Just now, they clearly saw that Hua Xianer was ready to press the emergency transmission button. As a result, Ye Ling suddenly appeared and interrupted Hua Xianer. Hong Xiu next to him smiled. Yeah, I didn't expect that Ye Ling would appear at this critical moment. But what surprised me was the strength shown by Ye Ling. No, it should be said that his spirit pet seemed to be too strong. Recalling the battle just now, Hong Xiu had to admit that Ye Ling really deserved the treatment given by the principal. As expected, he was a student that their Suzaku Yuling Envoy Academy wanted to recruit. He was indeed unique. No, you are a genius. Compared to these, Lu Feng now feels a bit of a headache. That is Ye Ling, who performed so well. Yes, it seems that now our 4 top-level Spirit Masters Academy seem to have set their sights on Ye Ling. I just didn't expect that even your Suzaku Spirit Masters Academy, which never recruits boys, would break this rule for Ye Ling. It's really beyond my expectation. Episode 69. Lu Feng's voice was not loud, but the representatives of the 3 families present could hear it clearly. Hong Xiu looked at Lu Feng disapprovingly. Teacher Lu, rules are dead, but people are alive for a rare genius like Ye Ling. It is not impossible to break the rules for him. What's more, our principal has been notified of this matter, and the principal has agreed, so I'm sorry to all the teachers. I must fight for Ye Ling. When talking about fighting, Hong Xiu showed extremely strong confidence. Such confidence comes from the conditions given by their principal. Hong Xiu believes that the probability of Ye Ling entering her college is still very high. Not only is the treatment good, but most importantly, there is only one boy, Ye Ling, in the entire Suzaku Yuling Envoy College. What a great honor. Moreover, there are many beauties in Suzaku Yuling Envoy College, and Hong Xiu doesn't mind being a matchmaker and introducing Ye Ling. This is a naked conspiracy, but it is also the ability of the Suzaku Yuling Academy. Haha. Okay, then we will compete fairly and see who will win Ye Ling. Hua Ling also restrained her smile at this time. She not only wanted Hua Xianer, but also wanted to compete for Ye Ling. In the eyes of the 4 top Yuling Academy, Ye Ling is now the one they must fight for. Hua Ling also looks very confident, and seems to be sure of winning Ye Ling. Bai Tong didn't say much, but his eyes have already said it all. Must fight for Ye Ling. As for Lu Feng, it was very strange. Ye Ling looked very poor. However, I really didn't expect that Ye Ling seemed to be very short of federal points. Such a genius should not be so unknown. With such a talent, how could the Federation treat him unfairly? At this time, the city lord Shang Lingkong, who was walking in the front, suddenly interrupted. Because Ye Ling is not a descendant of a family, and his previous grades were also average, your information records that Ye Ling is only at level 1 and level 2. I really don't know how this kid suddenly became stronger. Maybe it's really his talent. Shang Lingkong was also very puzzled by the fact that Ye Ling suddenly changed so much and didn't seem to be the same person as in the information. However, some people's talents may just be discovered later, but they are indeed very strong. In Shang Lingkong's eyes, perhaps Ye Ling is this kind of person, but no matter what, Shang Lingkong is still very satisfied with Ye Ling. At least he is not a descendant of a family, but grew up with the help of the Federation. Isn't he a descendant of a family? Hua Ling and others were slightly stunned. They really thought that Ye Ling relied on the resources of his family to grow to this point. Unexpectedly, Ye Ling relied entirely on himself. Such a genius is simply hot. Everyone's eyes were very hot when they looked at Ye Ling on the screen. Back to the secret realm again. At this time, Ye Ling, who had successfully collected the evolution materials, was also ready to leave here. If it weren't for the space ring, Ye Ling would really be a bit overwhelmed by so many things. In this world, there are some space equipment, although they are relatively rare, but for the family members, they are nothing. You can buy them online using federal points. Therefore, Hua Xianer was not curious about Ye Ling's space equipment. She also has one. The bracelet on her hand is a very good space equipment. You know, her father Hua Qingshan spent a lot of federal points to buy the space bracelet. Okay, it's not suitable to stay here for a long time. Let's go to another place. At this time, the smell of blood has spread. If you continue to stay, I'm afraid it will attract more monsters. If Ye Ling had someone, then maybe it would be fine. But now that he has an extra burden, Ye Ling has to be careful. Hua Xianer is worth 100,000 federal points, and Ye Ling doesn't want anything to happen to her. Otherwise, his 100,000 federal points will be gone. At Ye Ling's reminder, Hua Xianer nodded. The only person she can rely on now is Ye Ling. Ditsonglong is now seriously injured and his combat effectiveness has been greatly reduced. If she encounters more monsters, she may really fail this assessment. Ye Ling walked in front, and Huxianer followed closely behind. The two quickly disappeared into the depths of the dense forest. Sure enough, after a while, various monsters gradually began to appear in the place where the battle just happened. The weaker monsters directly sneaked away the body of the shadow wolf. Facing more powerful monsters, these monsters could only sneak around and dared not take the initiative to compete with these powerful monsters. However, the monsters with similar strength started a new round of fighting. It is normal for different monsters to fight. After leaving this place, Ye Ling and Huxianer found a place at random. After Ye Ling cleared all the monsters around, he could finally rest. Episode 70. Although the monsters around had been cleared, Ye Ling did not light a fire for safety reasons. Many animals are afraid of fire, but monsters are not. Lighting a fire in this secret place is undoubtedly telling the monsters directly that there are people here. It is purely a suicidal act. Huxianer also knew this, so she did not mention it. Ye Ling, how did you become so strong? Obviously before, you were still a. At the end, Huxianer still did not say those words. However, it is also conceivable that Huxianer can say something else, naturally the last one or something like that. At this moment, Ye Ling, who was leaning against the tree, still closed his eyes, and seemed to ignore Huxianer's meaning. The night itself is very dangerous, and you need to stay alert at all times. In this situation, it is basically impossible to have a good rest. Ye Ling can only rely on closing his eyes to rest and try not to let himself fall asleep. At this time, Huxianer did not think about having a good rest, but instead found himself chatting. It was really looking for something to do. Therefore, Ye Ling did not answer the question raised by Huxianer. Seeing Ye Ling's indifferent look, Huxianer couldn't help but blush slightly. She was a beautiful woman who took the initiative to chat with the other party, but the other party ignored her. This is simply infuriating. However, Huxianer did not give up. Ye Ling, I can't sleep anyway, I'll go out tomorrow, let's chat. It's really boring to sit there like this. It's impossible to chat with yourself. However, this time Ye Ling finally opened his eyes. Glancing at Huxianer, Ye Ling finally spoke. I say, Miss Hua, can't you take a good rest? What's there to talk about? It's better to take care of your spirit. Hearing that Ye Ling finally replied to her, Huxianer was immediately happy. Oh. You have cleared all the monsters around here anyway, there is nothing to do, just come and talk to me, come, sit next to me. As she said this, Huxianer patted the empty space beside her. The night was long and she had no mood to sleep. If she didn't find someone to chat with in this long night, Huxianer felt that she might go crazy. Of course, she had to rest, but she had to be careful when resting in this secret place. Otherwise, she would die and she wouldn't know why. Seeing Ye Ling, who seemed unmoved, Huxianer felt that she was really hit hard. Since she grew up, Huxianer had never been hit as hard as today. This was indeed the case. Born in the Hua family, Huxianer had never suffered any loss since she was a child. She was also very talented, let alone being hit. Huxianer bit her silver teeth lightly, puffed her cheeks slightly, and said with a little anger, Ye Ling, come here quickly. Ye Ling seemed too lazy to pay attention to Huxianer, and did not move or even say a word. Damn it. Really, a grown man actually bullies a little woman. Huxianer grumbled softly, clenching her jade hands tightly. After a while, Huxianer remembered that Ye Ling looked like a money grubber before. A plan came to her mind instantly, and the corners of her mouth slightly raised, with a charming smile on her face. She directly took out her right hand and raised 5 fingers. Ye Ling, come and chat with me. If you meet my request, I will give you 5,000 federal points. This time, Huxianer was also very direct and offered her own conditions. Chatting with her can get 5,000 federal points, which is simply a pie in the sky. Generally speaking, no one would refuse it. What's more, the person chatting is still a big beauty. As expected, when Ye Ling heard that there would be 5,000 federal points for chatting, he immediately opened his eyes. A pair of deep eyes stared straight at Huxianer. Are you serious? Chatting with you will give you 5,000 federal points? As soon as Ye Ling opened his mouth, he talked about federal points, and Huxianer was almost mad to death. Why can't this guy pay attention to the point? It's just 5,000 federal points? Is it really like this? The corner of her eye twitched slightly, and Huxianer's chest rose and fell rapidly a few times, and finally calmed down. Yes. That's right, chatting with me will give you 5,000 federal points. When saying this, Huxianer can be said to be gritting her teeth. She almost wanted to tear Ye Ling in half. Okay, then let's chat. If you don't take advantage of it, you are a bastard. Ye Ling is still very clear about this truth. And 5,000 federal points are really not a small amount. For a spirit master, perhaps it's not much. But for an ordinary person, this is equivalent to a month's salary, or even more than a month's salary. Just chatting can get it, easy and pleasant. Stand up and sit down next to Huxianer. If you want to talk about anything, just say it. I wonder what you want to talk about? Leaning against the tree behind, Ye Ling asked with his arms folded. After all, it was Huxianer who took the initiative to bring it up, so at this time, it was natural for Huxianer to start. Episode 71. After brushing her hair, Huxianer thought seriously about what she should talk about with Ye Ling. After thinking for a while, Huxianer finally asked her first question. By the way, let's talk about it first. How did your spirit pet suddenly become so strong? And it doesn't look like a zombie? Ever since she met Ye Ling at the bone mound last time, Huasianer has been curious about what Shueyo is like. It is completely different from the zombies in the rumors. In Huasianer's impression, zombies are usually scary undead with scary faces, fangs, and claws. But Shueyo doesn't seem to be anything like scary. Although Shueyo used his claws and showed his fangs in battle, it doesn't mean that Shueyo is a zombie. Ye Ling didn't think it was strange that Huasianer would ask such a question. Anyone who sees Shueyo for the first time may be curious about what kind of spirit pet this is. Moreover, Huasianer knew that Ye Ling's pet was supposed to be a zombie. Shueyo is a zombie, but she is different from ordinary zombies, she is quite special. At this point, Ye Ling stopped and said no more. If there is anything, just mention it briefly, it is not appropriate to say so much. Shueyo is a real zombie. If it were not for the existence of the system, Ye Ling would not know how to help her evolve. Regarding this matter, Ye Ling does not intend to tell anyone, nor does he want to tell anyone. If a zombie that cannot evolve can suddenly complete its evolution, it may even alarm the entire Federation. Although it may not necessarily embarrass Ye Ling's life will definitely not be peaceful. Therefore, for Shueyo being a zombie, this is a different question. Ye Ling attributed it to the fact that Shueyo is different from ordinary zombies. Because in the Federation, monsters or pets have a certain probability of mutation and become special existences among species. It's just that this kind of special existence is very rare, but almost all the mutations of monsters and pets will make them stronger. Therefore, most people in the Federation are envious of those who have mutated pets. Mutated pets are too rare, and also have great potential. But unfortunately, such mutated pets have never been cultivated or artificially created. Mutated zombies? Hearing Ye Ling say this, Huasianer was shocked and guessed secretly. If it is true that Shueyo is a mutated pet as Ye Ling said, then Ye Ling is destined to become very powerful in the future. As long as there is enough time, he will definitely become a strong man, there is no doubt about that. It is even basically certain that he will surpass Huasianer's father in the future. You know, Huasianer's father is only the 6th level, and such strength is indeed very powerful in a place like Tianhui City. But if you look at the entire Federation, it is almost nothing. There is nothing you can do about it. Remote places mean that resources are more scarce. With a trace of envy in her eyes, Huasianer found that she thought she had already thought highly of Ye Ling. Unexpectedly, the other party actually had a mutated spirit pet. It seems I still underestimated him. Looking at that slightly resolute face, Huasianer said secretly in her heart. Of course, Ye Ling didn't say much, he said it so obscurely, and Huasianer didn't continue to ask questions. Everyone has some secrets, and Huasianer is not the kind of person who likes to ask questions. Being a person who asks questions, it is easy to be disliked by others. At least for now, Huasianer still has a certain good impression of Ye Ling, but she doesn't want to be disliked by the other party. Therefore, Huasianer didn't hesitate at all on this issue and ignored it directly. The most feared thing is that the air suddenly becomes quiet. After answering the question, the scene suddenly became quiet again. Suddenly, Huasianer's smart eyes turned, and it seemed that she thought of another question. Ye Ling, with your strength, it shouldn't be a problem for you to enter the top-level Ye Ling Academy. Then have you ever thought about which academy you should choose? She was very curious about which top-level Ye Ling Academy Ye Ling would choose. Strength is a stepping stone, and Ye Ling obviously already has it. In fact, the strength Ye Ling showed far exceeded the expectations of those academy representatives. Huasianer could now imagine that those top-level Ye Ling Academy representatives, there is absolutely no way they would give up on a talented student like Ye Ling. However, she didn't know that Ye Ling had already shown even stronger strength, and could even use the level 2 spiritual power chain with ease. Just based on this, the Spiritual Masters Academy would go crazy for it. As long as Ye Ling can perform normally in the next second stage of the assessment, the final result will not be wrong at all. Episode 72. As for Huasianer herself, the academy she would go to had already been decided. The representative of Xuanwu Yulingshi Academy, one of the 4 top Yulingshi academies, came specifically for her this time. Her elder in the holy city, Hualing, came to Tianhui City to recruit her in person this time. In other words, Huasianer had no choice at all. As long as she could pass the assessment, she would definitely enter Xuanwu Yulingshi Academy. This point, beyond doubt, had already been decided. Now she was curious about which Yulingshi Academy Ye Ling would choose. If he chose Xuanwu Yulingshi Academy, the two of them could continue to be classmates, and she could continue to discover Ye Ling's secrets. After being saved by Ye Ling this time, Huasianer had a deep impression of Ye Ling to some extent. She still hoped that Ye Ling could enter the same Yulingshi Academy as her. Of course, this itself depended on Ye Ling's intention. Are you still asking me? Which Imperial Spirit Academy do you want to go to? With your strength, the 4 top Imperial Spirit Academy will not miss you. Ye Ling did not answer Huasianer's question immediately, but asked her about her choice. Huasianer pouted when she heard Ye Ling push the topic back to her, but she still answered the question truthfully. If nothing unexpected happens, I will go to Xuanwu Imperial Spirit Academy, because I have no choice. If she could choose, Huasianer would actually like to go to Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy. Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy can be said to support half of the female Imperial Spirit Academy. Most of the famous Imperial Spirit Academy come from this academy. Naturally, Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy is more popular among female students. Ye Ling also felt a little curious about Huasianer's mention of no choice. After all, he didn't know the relationship between Huasianer and Hualing. Why do you say there is no choice? With your strength, no matter which Imperial Spirit Academy you join, I'm afraid the other party will not refuse. If you have no choice, then do other students have any choice? Hearing this, Huasianer shook her head slightly. It's not what you think. The reason why I can't choose is that this time, the representative from Xuanwu Imperial Spirit Academy is from the Hua family of the Holy City. It can be said that this time they came specifically for me. I have already contacted my father in advance and asked me to join Xuanwu Imperial Spirit Academy. That's why I said I have no choice. Although there is no way to choose, Xuanwu Imperial Spirit Academy is also one of the top Imperial Spirit Academy with strong strength. Huasianer will not suffer at all if she enters Xuanwu Imperial Spirit Academy with Ye Ling there. She will even have special preferential treatment. After all, Ye Ling is a teacher there, and with the help of the Hua family of the Holy City, Huasianer's treatment cannot be bad. Although Huasianer is only a member of the Hua family branch, she is also a member of the Hua family anyway. It is only a matter of time before she enters the Hua family. Thinking of this, Huasianer couldn't help but shake her head and put aside the strange thoughts in her mind. Things in the future are too far away, and it is not something she should consider now. Then, Huasianer set her sights on Ye Ling again and asked again, "What about you? You haven't said yet, which Ye Ling school will you choose?" There was a hint of expectation in her tone. She still had some expectations, hoping that Ye Ling would choose to enter Xuanwu Ye Ling school with her. As soon as she mentioned herself, the information of various top Ye Ling schools flashed through Ye Ling's mind. In terms of strength, the gap between several top Ye Ling schools is not that big, or it can be said that they are on par. The resources provided to students by each school are also similar, almost uniform. If the resources given are equal, then what Ye Ling has to consider is the way to get in touch with monsters more. The Holy City is not a remote city like the Radiant City. There are a large number of troops in the city. Not only the troops, but also many powerful spirit masters are in the Holy City. The monsters in a large area around are all cleaned up very cleanly. If you want to become stronger by hunting monsters, it is not feasible to rely on monsters in the wild. You must enter the secret realm. Generally speaking, there are many restrictions on the number of times students can enter the secret realm. Some students may only go once a year. Unless you get other rewards, you are destined to have no chance to enter the secret realm. If Ye Ling wants to become stronger, then the number of times he enters the secret realm must be obtained more. At present, Ye Ling has not decided which Spirit Master Academy he should join. He is still ready to wait for the price. In the second stage of the assessment, Ye Ling will do his best to win the first place. The higher the ranking, the stronger the strength shown, and the more power he will have. If you want to recruit me, you need to offer better conditions. At that time, Ye Ling can choose to join the Yelingshi Academy, which is most beneficial to him. But this is a matter for the future, and Ye Ling has not thought it through yet. However, when answering Huasianer's question, Ye Ling naturally would not say so. Episode 73. With a slight smile on his lips, Ye Ling shook his head and replied, "I haven't decided yet, but if there is any Yelingshi Academy that is willing to introduce me to beauties, I might join. Of course, if it is Suzaku Academy, it would be even better. I heard that there are only female students there, so there must be many beauties." This was of course just a joke, but Huasianer took it seriously. After hearing this answer, the expression on Huasianer's face froze instantly. She never thought that Ye Ling would answer her question like this. This is simply too much. In front of a beautiful schoolgirl like me, you are still thinking about Yelingshi Academy introducing you to beauties, and even thinking about entering Suzaku Academy, which is a forbidden place for boys. Isn't it obvious that you look down on me, a schoolgirl? Huasianer is still very confident about her appearance and figure. Even if she goes to the Holy City, Huasianer doesn't think that her conditions will be worse than others. A young girl cares a lot about her beauty and figure. Bah! Scumbag! Glazing at Ye Ling fiercely, Huasianer couldn't help but curse. Ye Ling was stunned when he heard this word. Good fellow. The matter I'm talking about obviously has nothing to do with you. Why do you make it seem like I abandoned you after having an affair with you? Isn't this nonsense? What's the relationship between you and me? How did you become a scumbag? Miss Hua, we don't seem to have any relationship, right? How did I become a scumbag? Give me a reason first. Ye Ling was scolded for no reason. Of course he had to figure out what was going on. Otherwise, he would still be confused after being scolded. Huasianer didn't show any weakness at all, turned around, and looked directly at Ye Ling. She bit her silver teeth lightly, and then only heard a silver bell-like sound. You said you were not a scumbag, but you joined the Imperial Spirit Academy for such a reason. Do you think these Imperial Spirit Academy are marriage agencies? You also joined the Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy. Don't you know that the Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy never recruits boys? You think it's beautiful every day, but you joined the Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy. I think you are just dreaming. Humph. After saying that, Huasianer snorted heavily and turned her head away from Ye Ling. However, what she probably didn't expect was that the Suzaku Imperial Spirit Academy really wanted to recruit Ye Ling now. Maybe when she knew it, she would be shocked. He said so much, which made Ye Ling stunned. After hearing this, Ye Ling always felt that there was a faint sour smell in the air. Looking at Huasianer in surprise, Ye Ling said secretly, "Could this little girl have a crush on me? We haven't met each other twice, is it possible?" This can't be blamed on Huisiener, mainly because Ye Ling saved Huisiener at the most critical moment. Not only did Huisiener successfully survive in the secret realm, more importantly, Huisiener's qualification to become a spirit master was preserved. If she fails to become a spirit master, Huisiener will lose the support of her family like Lu Wu. The final outcome may not be much better. Maybe if she is lucky, she can marry a stronger spirit master. If she is unlucky, she may not even be a concubine. Huisiener, who was sulking alone, leaned against the tree, closed her eyes, and began to rest. Huisiener had been physically and mentally exhausted after fighting with the shadow wolf and being chased for so long. Now she suddenly stopped, and fatigue instantly invaded. After a while, Huisiener fell into a deep sleep. Hey! Miss Huisiener? After calling out twice in a row, there was still no response. The only sound coming was the even breathing sound, and Ye Ling could not help but be speechless. Good fellow. This is true, treating me as a bodyguard, but she actually fell asleep so blatantly, and she was in front of a grown man like me, not afraid of being taken advantage of by me. Although Huisiener had fallen asleep, Ye Ling did not dare to enter a deep sleep. Although the monsters around had been dealt with, there was no guarantee that there would not be some that slipped through the net. And there were monsters in the sky, so we had to stay alert at all times. But fortunately, as the level increased, the energy of the Ye Ling envoy would get better and better. For a powerful Ye Ling envoy, it was not impossible to persist for several days and nights without sleep. At present, Ye Ling could not persist for that long, but it was not a problem to persist for 2 or 3 days. The Ye Ling envoy could use the netherworld. I want to quickly recover the spiritual power in my body. If I only rely on my own body to recover, it will be very slow. During the battle today, Ye Ling also let go of his spiritual skills and consumed a lot of spiritual power. Taking advantage of this time, I can use meditation to recover. As for Shuiyu, he stood quietly beside Ye Ling like a loyal guard. Like a stone statue, there was no movement at all. Episode 74. It was late at night, and in this dangerous and terrifying secret realm, students were constantly eliminated. Some were because of their poor strength, while others were very unlucky. There were all kinds of students. Time flew by, and the time in the secret realm passed very quickly. The darkness of the night gradually dissipated, and the light covered the secret realm again. This was the 3rd day. As long as they could hold on until noon, they would have successfully passed the first test. The leaves of the towering trees and the plants in the base were all stained with the morning dew. At this moment, it seemed particularly quiet and a little cold. Ye Ling, who had been in a meditative state, opened his eyes and was about to stand up, but he felt a heavy feeling on his thigh. He looked down and found that Huisiener was sleeping on his thigh. If you look closely, you can even see a trace of crystal at the corner of her mouth. With a twitch of his mouth, Ye Ling did not expect that after he entered the meditative state, Huisiener would actually use him as a pillow. Since he did not feel any hostility towards himself, Ye Ling did not wake up in the meditation state. As for Shuiyu, Ye Ling had told her before entering the meditation state, as long as there was no hostile existence towards him, he did not care. Huisiener, who was asleep, naturally could not have any hostility towards Ye Ling, so Shuiyu did not move at all. Reaching out and pushing Huisiener, Ye Ling tried to wake her up. Huisiener turned over very unwillingly, and even stretched out her hands and hugged Ye Ling. This inexplicable operation made Ye Ling stunned. This is really careless. This action is not treating oneself as an outsider at all. Since you took the initiative, don't blame me for being rude. Ye Ling showed a wicked smile on his face, and stretched out his sinful right hand at the same time. He put his hand on Huisiener's face and squeezed it a little harder. Huisiener frowned slightly, as if she felt a little uncomfortable. The whole person also woke up slowly, and when she opened her sleepy eyes, she saw Ye Ling, who was close at hand. Huh? She was still a little sleepy, but she woke up instantly. She hurriedly sat up, and Huisiener felt a little confused. Seeing the movements of Ye Ling's hands, she was startled and leaned back quickly. You didn't do anything to me?" she asked shyly, covering her chest with her hands. No one knew why she would lie on Ye Ling's legs as soon as she woke up. Any normal woman would feel that she was being taken advantage of. Ye Ling, who was completely a victim, spread his hands helplessly. Then, he pointed to a small pool of saliva on his pants and said helplessly, "Seeing my pants, don't you understand what's going on? Don't worry, I didn't take advantage of you. 105,000 federal points are with you. How could I take advantage of you at this time, right? So don't think about it. I'm not very interested in you for the time being." After seeing the pool of saliva on Ye Ling's pants, Huisiener understood. It was she who took the initiative to fall asleep on Ye Ling's thigh. Not only that, but she also drooled while sleeping. She looked down at her clothes again. They were indeed intact, and there was no damage. She breathed a sigh of relief. Then, when she thought of the way she drooled while sleeping, Huisiener couldn't help blushing. She never thought that she would sleep on Ye Ling's thigh and drool. This is simply social death. Her image is completely gone. But when Huisiener heard the second half of Ye Ling's words, she was immediately furious. The face, which was originally flushed due to shyness, turned pale and red. It seems that she was very angry. "What do you mean you didn't take advantage of me? What do you mean you are not interested in me? You think about the federal points every day. Would I lack your federal points? Steal straight man." Huisiener scolded Ye Ling over and over in her heart. "I am a big beauty, sleeping on your thighs, but you don't know to cherish her. You are still thinking about the federal points. What else is a steal straight man?" Giving Ye Ling a fierce look, Huisiener gritted her teeth and said, "You good. Very good. I will remember you, Ye Ling. If eyes can kill, Huixiner probably has no idea how many times she has killed Ye Ling. But it's a pity that although eyes can kill people, at least Huixiner can't. Some rare pet or monster that is good at mental attacks and can kill people with its eyes. However, this kind of pet or monster is too rare. Hearing this, Ye Ling showed his big white teeth and smiled. Of course I'm fine, I'm healthy, and I enjoy everything I eat. Huixiner was so angry that she couldn't speak. She really didn't know how to confront Ye Ling. Huh. With a cold snort, Huixiner turned her head away, not wanting to look at Ye Ling's annoying face. Episode 75. Okay, it's getting late, get up, get something to eat, and then I'll start hunting. Standing up from the ground, brushing off the dust on his clothes, Ye Ling began to prepare breakfast. Breakfast was the meat of the monsters from before. Due to limited materials, he could only make do with some. When Ye Ling finished all this, he found that Huixiner was still sitting there, and seemed to be still angry with him. Sighing slightly, Ye Ling came to Huixiner and handed her the food. Miss Hua, hurry up, I'm very busy, and I have to do my own things after eating. Humph, was the response he got, still a cold snort. Huixiner didn't even look at the food in Ye Ling's hand, and was still angry about what happened just now. Slowly squatting down, Ye Ling grabbed Huixiner's hand and pulled her hand over, put the food in her hand and admonished at the same time. Eat quickly, if you don't eat after I finish, don't blame me for leaving you here. After saying that, Ye Ling turned around and went back to have breakfast. As for Huixiner, she couldn't help but be tempted by the aroma of the food in her hand. Gurgle. She wanted to fight back and say that she didn't need to eat these, but her stomach suddenly rebelled. Looking back, she didn't eat anything last night and has been holding on until now. It's reasonable to be hungry if I don't eat. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep up with Ye Ling when he leaves. Since Ye Ling has already said that he will leave later, he will leave naturally. If I don't fill my stomach, I'm afraid I can't keep up with him. Thinking of this, Huixiner turned around and looked at Ye Ling fiercely, muttering softly, "Straight man. You don't know how to coax others, Although she was unhappy, Huixiner would not treat her stomach badly. He ate the food in big mouthfuls, although there were few seasonings. It tasted very delicious because he was too hungry. Ye Ling, who was enjoying breakfast, saw Huixiner who had already started eating, and his mouth slightly raised. Soon, breakfast time was over. Ye Ling also took action and set off with Huixiner. Now, there was only half a day left. In this half day, Ye Ling wanted to defeat more monsters as quickly as possible and gain as much experience points and growth as possible, so that Xueyu could complete the next stage of the plan earlier. When Xueyu completes the evolution again, his strength will definitely become stronger. Maybe he will open up more powerful skills or talents. Ye Ling, isn't it good for us to stay where we were just now? Why do we have to take the initiative to take risks? Huixiner, who followed behind, was not very clear about what Ye Ling was going to do, but it was certain that Ye Ling was definitely looking for something. Later, Huixiner knew what Ye Ling was looking for. It turned out that Ye Ling was actually looking for monsters. Every time he found one or a group of monsters, Ye Ling would kill them. Originally, this secret place was very scary, but now Huixiner felt like she was sightseeing. She walked here and there, and she didn't need to do anything. All the monsters she encountered were easily wiped out by Ye Ling's pet Xueyu. So because the light was too dim last night, Huixiner didn't see Xueyu's true appearance clearly. It wasn't until today that she saw that Xueyu's appearance was not inferior to hers at all, and even her figure was a little better than hers. If it weren't for knowing that Xueyu was a pet, Huixiner even thought that Xueyu was a person. Although she didn't want to admit it, Huixiner was indeed jealous. If others knew that Huixiner could only be jealous of a pet, it would probably make people laugh. Damn it. What a pervert. His pets are so pretty. This was Huixiner's truest thought when she saw Xueyu's delicate face and tall figure. Obviously, her figure and appearance were not bad, but Ye Ling didn't even flirt with a beautiful woman like her. Doesn't this mean that she has no charm? Thinking of this, Huixiner was very angry. Time flew, and soon a morning passed. Compared to the vicious monsters at night, most monsters during the day were much weaker. For a whole morning, she didn't even encounter a monster above level 7. But no matter how small a mosquito leg is, it is still meat as long as it is a monster encountered. Ye Ling will kill it. None of them were spared. They carried out a set of processes very skillfully. Xueyu went up to kill him, and then Ye Ling decomposed the materials. The division of labor and cooperation was perfect. Congratulations to candidate Ye Ling for successfully passing the first stage of the assessment. Congratulations to candidate Huixiner for successfully passing the first stage of the assessment. When it was close to noon, the watches on the hands of the two people finally sent a reminder sound. With the sound of this sound, it means that the first stage of the assessment has ended.